Hello and welcome back to the Chaos Standard Podcast. I'm Uncle Flacco and I'm so glad you've joined us here today. That's right, we have the man, the myth, the Eldrazi Menace. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I, I I think that did a good job all on its own. I am the Eldrazi Menace.
This is C Squared. C Squared is a very good player and consistently tops other formats in UOL and has even topped in Chaos Standard a couple of times. But this time has actually won the last season, so we're gonna have him on for an interview.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here, and it's great to win. Winning is nice.
Winning is nice. I'll let you know when I actually do it myself. Oh
You'll get
man,
there.
I
I
hope
mean,
so.
to be quite honest, the reason I played the deck I played is because of your deck in the previous season.
Oh, that's very nice to hear. But before we get into that, we should introduce the last format. The last format consisted of 8th edition, Rivals of Ixalan, Ravnica Allegiance, Legions, M13, and Murders at Karlov Manor with Wilderness Reclamation on the ban list. So, before we get into your deck, I want to get into the format in general. What do you remember about last format?
Um, I was of two minds, I guess, going into it. Either a mono red aggro deck with Cavalcade or the green deck I ended up playing, which was a Stompy Plow Under deck. Other than that, I mean, it looked like there were decent sack options with Priests of Forgotten Gods and Insidious Roots, and there was something there, and I played against that several times. There were control decks with Cryptic Coat, Ill-Timed Explosion. Um, I know you had a pretty funky teamer deck with the vehicle from Murders that flashed back spells I think when it attacked,
Oh, the
and you did
Volt
some
Strider
funny
deck
stuff
was
with
so
Plow Under
fun.
there. But I actually didn't do that much testing, so I don't know what people were really trying out.
Yeah, that's fair. I can break that down one at a time. So, I really enjoy Cavalcade, but the reason why I usually don't do Cavalcade is because in Standard, there was Chandra Spitfire from M20, and that card gives the deck a lot of explosiveness that it otherwise lacks. I feel like the deck kind of dies to a board wipe in a sense because it does its damage one at a time or two at a time.
Yeah, that was
But
kind of where I ended up after
yeah,
playing that one a few times.
I think the mono red deck was actually pretty good. Huey built a version that had a bunch of ways to discard your hand and draw three or whatever. So,
Yeah, the case, right?
yeah, that deck drew a ton of cards if it ever got into the late game, which meant that it had some way to push through a ton of damage. So I think Mono Red was pretty good. Other than that, I saw that Long Goodbye was, along with Searing Spear and to a lesser extent Lightning Helix, were the best removal options in the format.
I would argue Archdruid's Charm belongs in that list.
Uh, for your specific deck, yes, Archdruid's Charm is very good
I just,
removal.
just mean in general. It has multiple options you can do, and as a removal spell, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, like just in general, even if you're low on creatures, Archdruid's Charm is one of the best cards in the format. And with Farseek plus Surveil lands, you could basically just play however many colors you wanted and also have the ability to play Archdruid's Charm.
I didn't go that deep this format. Now, next format. Oh boy.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to that, but yeah. You can definitely do stuff with that. Yeah, even with Archdruid's Charm, I know that we had Teamer on for a different episode, and they said that having four CMC creatures with four or more toughness is a really good threshold to hit because the common removal options don't usually hit them. So being able
That's a
to
good
get,
point about
yeah,
that
being able to
collections
get to that
removal.
point is really nice,
Hmm.
which is part of what made Huey's semifinals deck really good. It had, uh,
The demon, whose
yeah,
name I
what's
can't
the
remember, but the
demon?
4/4, the Spawn of Mayhem, I believe.
Yes.
But it's a 4 mana card that you cast on turn 3 because of Spectacle.
Yeah, that card destroyed me, both in testing and in tournament. And it was just impossible to remove because it was hitting those magical numbers earlier than it should have been, or earlier
Hmm.
than I expected to.
Yeah, his deck was sweet. It was a tough matchup for sure. Lots of flyers, lots of removal, lots of tempo.
Yeah. Um, we should talk about your deck then. How did you like your deck?
So it was the first deck I built when the format was released, except it looked a little different. In my initial glance through, I missed Cryptic Coat, so I was on Axebane Ferox in that slot instead, and I was generally unhappy with it because curving 1 drop into 3 drop, well, I only had one 3 drop, and that was the Jadelight Ranger, and only having one 3 drop to curve into after Birds of Paradise or Arbor Elf just didn't feel good enough. And so I was kind of unsatisfied with where I was until like 2 days before the format. And that's when I remembered Cryptic Code existed. And all of a sudden the deck felt great.
Yeah, a lot of people forgot Cryptic Code existed, including me. I forgot Cryptic Code existed for a while. The card is insane, and I totally agree with curve considerations in a Stompy deck. The reason why I played the cards that I played was in consideration of a curve. Like you had all of your 1 mana dorks, and then you had your 3 mana plays, which is most important in a Stompy deck like this. And when I played it, we had
You're at
Steel
Steel
Leaf
Leaf Champion.
Champion.
Yeah.
Steel Leaf Champion is really good, but Cryptic Code isn't too much worse than that, especially if
It,
you're
it
playing Plow Unders.
so on turn 2, it's much worse than Steel Leaf Champion. But as you get later into the game, as you have more mana, as resources are more strained, Cryptic Coat just soars.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but that's this was the first deck I built in part because I played against you in the previous season, where you were on that Stompy deck, where I was on a bigger ramp deck, and I had Plow Under in that deck, and I didn't like it there in the big ramp deck as much, and I liked it much better in a version like your deck had been, and that's what I wanted to try since Plow Under was still in the format.
Yeah. Um, Plow Under's just a messed up card in general.
It
It doesn't
sure is, man.
particularly matter which deck you put it in. All you have to do is resolve two of them, and your opponent loses the game. Sometimes even one is enough, but
If you have any amount of pressure, Plow Under is just so backbreaking, and
yeah.
that's what I wanted to leverage. And I mean, in my semifinals matchup, I went Plow Under into Plow Under with just a minimal advantage, and just buried my opponent.
Mm-hmm. And that
There
was
was they
part
were
of
an
the
elves deck sitting
yeah.
on the what was it, the coat of arms to
Yeah.
massive buff all their elves, and they never got to 5 mana.
Oh, and 5 mana was an important threshold for that deck to hit.
But yeah, my deck ended up playing really well. 1 drop into 3 drop, lots of value, could grind. Pick Your Poison was an all-star from the sideboard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Pick Your Poison was incredible. Um, there's a reason why it, I think, still sees a lot of constructed play.
I think it's almost a dollar on dollar common.
That's a lot of money for a common.
Yeah, I think modern is the primary culprit.
I mean, yeah, the One Ring is a little bit strong, just a little
Just a
bit.
little bit. Just a little bit.
It's
Also
like it's
grabs
like almost as
new
good as
neck card.
Plow Under. No.
The other part about my deck that I really liked is sideboarding into 8 counter spells. That was
Mm-hmm.
really a lot of fun against decks trying to play Wrath, whatever sort of Wrath they were playing.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised you didn't have counter spells in the main board, but I think you were just trying to go as fast as possible in game one.
Yeah, in game one against an unknown opponent, I just wanted to leverage my fast plow under starts, where I play 3-drop into Thragtusk into something into plow under, and then just beat them before they have time to do anything. And then depending on what they're doing, I change my sideboard with lots and lots of counter spells. Repulsive Mutation was especially funny. I made a Birds of Paradise big.
Ooh, that sounds really sweet. Repulsive Mutation, for those of you who don't know, is X, a green, and a blue for an instant. You put X 1/1 counters on target creature you control. Then you counter up to one target spell unless its controller pays mana equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. So if X equals 0, it's a pseudo mana leak, and if you pump mana into it, then you can just make your creatures bigger, which I've heard is pretty good when you're trying to do a stompy game plan.
Pretty sweet, pretty funny, and unfortunately sometimes doesn't work, but because if you only have one creature and they kill it, then you're just kind of boned. But if you pick your spot well, it can be pretty backbreaking.
Yeah. I mean, your deck is half creatures. There's not a very high chance that you're only going to have one, but who knows? Maybe they slipped a board wipe under your counter spell.
Usually unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
The other big card was Thragtusk. I mean, come on. It's
Oh,
the Thragdadderson himself.
I
This card is
yeah, Thragtusk
absolutely
was.
cracked.
Oh my god. There's a reason why you always carry two spears. Thragtusk, I played a lot of, and I will continue to play a lot of in the next format.
He sure didn't rotate.
Mm-hmm. Just like every other card, it gets two chances. So you need four spears.
But yeah, having Thragtusk and Hydroid Krasis in the same deck meant aggro was a really hard matchup to lose with all that life gain.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Hydroid Krasis gains a bunch of life, draws a bunch of cards. Very good into the late game, just like Cryptic Code. This
But
deck
thanks
just
to all
has
that, I was
everything.
able to both stop aggro and grind control in mid-range decks, and that just felt really nice.
Mm-hmm. The mana base is very clean as well. All of the green sources, and then just 8 copies of your forest islands.
I wish there was another green-blue duel. There are some games where if they had killed a Birds of Paradise, my mana was pretty awkward. So another duel would have been nice. They just didn't exist, unfortunately. I think that was the weakest part of the deck.
You could have played like a copy or two of City of Brass, but
No thanks.
yeah. I mean, you did have life gain, but uh, it does not work with Arbor Elf, so I understand.
I think I would have played like a copy or two of Yavimaya Coast because that can sometimes tap for colorless and it doesn't hurt me. But otherwise, no on the City of Brass.
That makes sense.
The one thing I think that surprised me the most about the format is I did not run into any Blood Moons.
I don't think I did either. I definitely built my decks around Blood Moon because it showed up in the last format. Someone played a red green deck with Blood Moon in it, but yeah, it just didn't show up, I think.
There are a lot of just really mean and rude cards from 8th edition that I expected to show up, like Ensnaring Bridge, Blood Moon. I played the Plow Unders,
Mm-hmm.
but far fewer of those cards showed up than I had expected.
Yeah, and like Choke and Boil and Flash
Yeah,
Fires.
Choke, Boil, all those really obnoxious hate cards.
Yeah. I felt like a lot of times I was pulled into building 3 color decks in that format because of just how the mana worked out with all of the surveil lands and ease of access of fixing, but it is interesting to see the 2 color deck win the tournament.
I think Kiwi was also on a 2-color deck. I think it was straight blue-black.
Yeah, and I think I looked at blue black, but I might have turned it into Esper because of Ravnica Allegiance giving good blue white cards,
Yeah,
or even like Grixis because of the black and red cards. But yeah, that That's a problem that has been exacerbated by
Triomes in the next format.
triomes. Uh huh. I have no idea if building a two color deck is even optimal in that format, like at all.
Well, part of it is, I know this is getting ahead of ourselves to the next format, but part of it for the next format is you have the allied checks as well. And the triomes you do have are the ones that are two ally color pairs.
Yeah. And
So
like we had check lands
the
in
mana
this
makes it
format,
just so
but
easy to play the third color. If you're blue-white, you might as well add black because you have Drowned Catacomb and you have Rafine's Tower.
yeah. And like even if you decided to go two colors, you're probably still playing triomes because they cycle themselves.
Yeah, you're going to play the Jund Triome in your red-green deck because it makes two of your colors and it cycles. The issue with that is you run into a bunch of tap lands, so it depends on what you're trying to do in terms of how fast you're trying to be. How many tap lands can you really afford?
Mm-hmm.
Which is something I've noticed as I've built decks in the next format.
Yeah, it is hard to balance when all of the best fixing is tap lands. Like, how many do you actually want to play? I kind of had that problem with my deck for the last format, where I was playing Mana Dorks originally to make up for the fact that I had so many tap lands. But I think the deck played a little bit cleaner when I played more on tap lands. And
Untapped lands are good.
yeah, they curve out much better than tap lands.
The one card I considered a lot and thought about a lot, but ultimately didn't play was Farseek. Very powerful card, but it didn't really contribute as much to the beatdown plan. I just wanted the one drops.
Yeah, I think if you were ramping out to bigger threats, it would have been a natural include, but then you probably would have been a ramp deck and not a stompy deck.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been on the Growth Chamber Guardians. I probably still would have been on Jade Light Ranger, but I wouldn't have been on Yeva.
Yeah. And I was
Yeva is
expecting you
also
to
very
play.
funny here. Instant Speed Thragtusk,
Yep.
Instant Speed Hydroid Crisis, Cast Trigger.
Gastric. I know that we saw Yeva plus Seedborn Muse. Like
That
flash
is
in
funny.
Yeva and then put Seedborn Muse in during your turn and just play again during your opponent's turn, but
That is funny.
yeah,
Seems a little fragile, but seems funny.
that's what I thought too. And I was expecting you to play a ramp deck because in the previous two formats leading up to this, you were playing ramp decks.
Yeah, like I said, you had played the Stompy green deck with plows, and that's what I wanted to do. And we still had two different one drops for ramp.
Hmm.
So
And I guess that Learn Lesson rotated out, and
sure
that
did.
was a
What a
huge
sad
help
day.
for your deck.
What a sad day.
Don't worry, it'll come back someday, probably.
We go through formats quickly enough.
Yeah. So, now that you are here, we can, and we talked about last format, I'm going to introduce the current format, which is Legions, M13, Murders at Karlov Manor, Invasion, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, and Streets of New Capenna with Battle of Wits on the ban list. And so, C2, what decks are you looking at for this format?
Well, the first thing I did was I looked at the mana, and I hinted at it earlier, but allied mana is really good. You have check lands, you have surveil lands, and the triomes are the um, two allied combinations joining together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really good. If you want to build an enemy colored deck, I don't see it. You only have the surveil lands as your only duels, or playing off-color triomes, and that's a lot of tap lands.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of off enemy color decks. Then the first actual spell I looked at was Farseek because wow, triomes.
Yep. Uh, I will be looking at that now too.
Um, and I have a nice little domain deck, nice little five colors, 10 tap lands, no problems.
Oh,
And then
that's
the
not too
other
bad.
Then the other deck I was looking at was an Esper Rafine aggro deck because Rafine is kind of cracked,
Yeah.
and Cryptic Coat with Rafine is very funny.
Oh, that sounds
Um,
amazing. Yeah.
and yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Also, that deck has a little bit of inspiration from Huey's deck that I played against in the finals last season.
Yeah. I think that deck is a great place to start with building a mid range style deck with counter spells in it.
Except instead of Mana Leak, I get Normal Lives.
I love No More Lies.
You know, someone wanted it banned from Pioneer.
Oh, I'll bet a lot of people want it banned from Pioneer. Mana
I
Leak
think those
is not
people
a
are
fun
very
card to
funny.
play against.
I mean, while true, it's far from the thing you need to ban from Pioneer.
Yeah.
It's just very funny.
I do want to ask what's the top end of your domain deck?
Oh, that's a little guy called Titan of Industry,
Oh, yeah. I love Titan of Industry.
and and of course your boy Thragdaterson. There's no way we're not.
Woo! We love Thragtusk!
And of course we've got the Cryptic Coat still. Can't leave those guys at home.
Oh, no, of course not. Just put all of the best cards in the format into one deck, and
Yes.
only with 10 tap lands.
Well, you see, when you have Farseek and Topiary Stomper, you're okay.
Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah, anything is possible.
It sure is.
You don't even have to believe, it just works.
It just works. One thing I will note is I decided not to play any of the double white sweepers because those are they're on 4 mana rather than 5 mana, and I feel like that's too early for double white. So be careful about your sweepers.
Yeah. Would you want to play like Ill-Timed Explosion as a 4 mana sweeper?
Sure am.
Yeah, okay.
And then, but the main one is Deadly Cover Up. Deadly Cover Up is just a nice little catch-all and can sometimes take away all their Thragdatersons.
Yeah. Or if they're trying to cheese you out with, I don't know, Slime Against Humanity, that just
Oh, that'd be very
that
funny.
just wins the game.
Just the casual exile half your deck.
Yeah, we should tell the modern players about that one. There's no reason Slime Against Humanity should have gotten top 32 in a modern challenge.
Wait, it did.
Yeah,
What? What are we doing here?
I
I
don't
assume we're
know.
not casting Slime Against Humanity. We're doing something else.
I think there were like, I think it tried to like surgical its own Slime Against Humanity and then give the slime token haste.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was quite the deck.
'Cause I'm assuming we're just putting a bunch of empty space in our deck, and then we're getting rid of it, and now we're just hyper focused on whatever the deck is actually doing.
That could also be. I don't remember the deck list well enough to tell you that. I know it had 20 Slime Against Humanity, though.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. But, anyways, I think we have wrapped up our musings. We've filled out enough space on the podcast, so thank you so much for joining me, C2.
Thank you for having me.
I'd love to see you here again sometime.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
My little
You
boy
planning
Titan of
on winning?
Industry is going to carry me.
Although there's no plow under in this format, so
That's okay. Farseek forgives all sins.
uh, and I thank you, the listener, for making it this far. And if you have, as always, the link to join UOL is in the description. We'd love to have you there. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Dude, I'd love Strip Mine and Commander. I don't care. Strip Mine's great.
It doesn't need to hit basics, man. Why does it hit basics?
Uh, yeah, that's true. It's to hit the people playing snow.
Yeah, that's where we need to spend our energy. They're the ones who need to be stopped.
What, you think I'm gonna overload break the ice? Be reasonable.